My name's Ty BOOMERSHINE. I'm an American dancer. I've worked in dance since, long time. I started working with Lucinda Childs in 1991, I believe. Yeah. And I've been working with her on and off since then, both as a dancer in her company and as her rehearsal director and artistic assistant. Currently, I'm the artistic director of the Dance On Ensemble, a company based in Berlin for dancers over the age of 40. The piece I'll be staging for the constellation is called CALICO MINGLING. I'm not really sure why Lucinda titled the piece this. She often has somewhat mysterious titles. I know that the calico part is a pattern, mingling is obvious, it's mixing together. She created it in 1973. It's one of her first group works, actually, after being a soloist or making solo work with the Judson Dance Theater. I know her interest was in pattern, rhythm, change of direction, and trying to get dance back to its essence. And she's often talked about how for her dancing at its essence was about moving. And for her that started with walking. So with walking, changing direction, changing rhythm, this was her first experiments into what that could mean with choreography. The idea that the Judson Church sort of championed this ordinary movement was something that they were working on in the 60s to show that anything, whether it's washing the dishes or eating an apple or walking, could be considered dance. So a piece like Calico Mingling, although it's simply walking in patterns, it does require a training, let's say, both mentally and physically to maintain it. So I think the idea that anything could be considered performance or dance was absolutely a political point to allow dance to be less elitist in terms of choreography, but it didn't remove the respect that they have for the discipline or the diligence it requires to be a dancer. I think all of the Judson people very much respected and valued that kind of work. Well, specifically with Lucinda, she almost always works with scores. I think after her first piece, Untitled Trio, which I don't know there's a score for, an Untitled Trio we will be performing in the Constellation. But the next piece she made, which I'm staging, Calico Mingling, she created a very beautiful written graphic score for. And from that point on, all of her work has been scored by her in a graphic form, usually from an overhead point of view. And that's just how she works. She uses it both as a way to record the piece and as a way to see possibilities both in and out of the studio. She works with the dancers, she tries things, she goes home and tries things on paper, and between the two she finds ways to move further. When I transmit the piece or teach them, I use both her scores, notes that other dancers have made, and also in discussion with Lucinda what's important to her and what she wants to see from these pieces. And the scores are certainly helpful. It's a bit like archaeology. It's sort of looking at them, deciphering it, trying to understand what it is that she's aiming for and what's important, and sharing that with the dancers as much as possible. I will try, of course, to make it the same piece, and as much as possible, we will aim for the same feeling. I think the difference is, at the time in '73, this was extremely radical. It upset a lot of people to see a dance like this. Like, was it dance? That was a large argument, I think, amongst her contemporaries as well as amongst dance critics. But I think in these days, we're used to things like this much more. We've seen minimal work. We're aware of what's behind it and the importance of it, both in visual art and music and architecture. So I think seeing it expressed in dance is less maybe confronting for an audience. I think they've learned how to accept the beauty in it and to see the skill that's required and to appreciate it. the series of pieces that we titled The Works in Silence that the Dance On Ensemble will perform are all from the early 70s. It's a period of Lucinda's work that I find really important. It's when she was exploring these ideas of rhythm and space, organizing dancers on stage in a very minimalist and essential way. And you can see through the order of the pieces, the development of her work and the physical evolution, from walking to turning to running and skipping, and then almost balletic steps. And that, for me, was such a clear line in a choreographer's work, and I find it very beautiful. And it was important for me to show these pieces because they aren't seen. 3 or 4 of them have not been seen since the 70s, and I was very happy to bring them back to life. Calico Mingling falls in the early part of this period. It's from basically 1973 to 1979 that Lucinda was making works without music. This piece was also performed in theaters. It's famously filmed on a courtyard in New York. There's this very beautiful film. And so a lot of people assume the work is always done outside, but it was actually just for that film. It was often done in theaters or in spaces. But a lot of that period of work were done in alternate spaces because theaters were questioning the kind of work they were doing, these post-Judson choreographers, which Lucinda was a part of. So she often had to really fight for the right to perform in theaters. It's also why her work came to Europe so much, because I think in Europe they were much more open to this idea of experimental dance and putting it in a stage context. When I auditioned for Lucinda originally as a young dancer, I was just, like most of us, looking for a job, a chance to dance. I had seen one piece, I think, on video. I hadn't seen the company live, and I was very happy to be hired and thrilled. But over the years, and as I danced for her, I also found that it's also something I liked, and I still like it. It's very much my taste. And that's not always the case as a professional dancer. You often dance in work that you try to do well and be as committed and professional as you can be. But with Lucinda's work, I found something that I could really admire and respect very profoundly. So for me, it's a gift and a pleasure to be able to be a part of something that I genuinely myself find beautiful and important. I recognize how she changed the dance world and what her point of view has done for dance in general.